Chase asked me if I could record the process I usually go through when I am analyzing survey results. And I thought it was a good opportunity not only to show you some VBA stuff and also to have a recording on how to create a DAX measure with Excel and Power Pivot, because we don't have a recording of that. We only have recordings of Power BI as far as I know. So I'll start by just importing the survey data from a survey that we have. I go to data, get data from file, from DAX and CSV. I'll go and choose this one. Going to transform data and some versions of Excel. It's not transform data, it's edit. Okay, so right now I'll just remove top rows, and in this case it's 2 rows. I'll promote this head, the first row as headers. It changed types for me. Let me see if I agree with that. Yeah, I do. So I'll filter out those who closed. I will have participant here. You'll see why. We're going to use this as a primary key to another import of the survey that we are going to use. So now I'll remove this column. I'll just have these ones with questions and this one with the participant kind of ID. And I'll close and load 2, clicking the little arrow right here, then close and load 2, only create connection, add this to the data model, and hit OK. Here we see it worked. I just changed one thing. I want to change the survey name to just employee survey. So if you have to change names, to change the survey name, make sure to do it right at the beginning. Sorry, not the survey name, the table name. Make sure to do it right at the beginning, or it may crash some of your measures and some things will stop working. All right, so I have my survey data right here. And yeah, so last time we created one DAX column to see if these people were favorable, neutral, or unfavorable to these questions. And in this case, as we have 16 columns of data and one is participant ID, I would have 16 columns to, well, actually not 16 because of these two that are free text. So it would be 14 questions that I would want people to go and actually that we would have to go and create one column for each of them. So in this case, let's not do this because it would be a lot of work. And let me show you another way of doing this just quicker. So I'm going to duplicate this, this connection, this query. And don't worry, because it doesn't copy all the data that you have here. It won't double the size of your spreadsheet. The reason for this is just referencing the data file that we have, the CSV file. I'm going to rename this query that I duplicated and that I came here to edit. And I'm going to call this just favorability table. And this table will not have all these things, all the responses, it will actually just have favorability. So I'm gonna choose all these columns where we have these questions. And then I'm going to transform right here. And then I will replace values. Value to find will be strongly agree. And I'll replace it with favorable. And now I will replace somewhat agree with favorable. Now I'll replace neither agree nor disagree and replace it with neutral. Somewhat disagree, replace with unfavorable. Strongly disagree, I'll replace with unfavorable as well. All right, and I'll just leave the not applicable here. And now we have one column for each of the questions with just favorability. Now, if we want to really have the other, if we really want to have the answers, we still have the other table, the other query, and this one just transformed the responses into favorability with replace values. All right, so I'll go to File, Close, and Load to. Only create connection, add this to the data model, and hit OK. And there you go. Now I have these two. So I'll go and edit the data model. Go to diagram view. Let's use this participant from favorability table to, okay, so this one's going to be the main one because it's filtering down to this one. Let me just put this one down. And now we have everything connected. Now I have the question answers and the favorability on each of the questions. Now let's move to create the DAX measures to do our analysis. And to do this, yeah, we have to record a macro and see how we're going to edit it. So if you get kind of lost, don't worry. Like you can replay this video several times. You can ask me questions. I don't expect you all to know everything about VBA. And VBA is out of the scope of this course, so don't worry about this. But if you see this as an interesting tool to use, then just use this video as a resource to learn something. So when you record a macro, and this is the button here to record a macro. So VBA and Excel, they record everything that you're doing, and they try to make this into lines of code that you can replicate later. So we'll use this to create a DAX measure, and we'll just change the code a little and have VBA do make the other measures for us, because we're gonna have like about 28 measures, one for favorability and one for unfavorability on each of the questions, so that we have all the data available and ready to go in Power BI or Power Pivot. So if you just go and edit data model and try to create the DAX measure there, VBA will just not record it. So if you want it to record, you have to actually do it on this environment right here. And this is why we're going to create a pivot table. We're not even going to have to use it. It's just to have access to this and be able to create the measure that we want. Okay, so for this one, we're going to, let's use this one, because favorable, unfavorable, and neutral is going to be better for us because we won't have to use or function. So I'll right click, oh, sorry, I actually have to click here to start recording macro. I'm gonna call this create DAX measure, and this is just the name I wanted to give my macro. So you can call it whatever you'd like, and create DAX measure. I'll hit OK. Now it's recording. So I'll just right click this table, the favorability one, and add the measure. I'll call it favorability. Just call it Q1. Actually, no, I'm going to call it question 1, and then I'll rename it. Then my formula would just be my manager. And then you have like a lot of fields, and we want to use the one that's in the favorability table. So let's see if this is question 1, communicates his or her expectations. So it's this one. This is what we're calling question 1 here. So this is the table. I'm just gonna cut it, and then I will do calculate count of this. Just pasted what I had there. Then we're done with count. Now we're going to do the filter for calculate, and the filter is going to be the same column, equals favorable. And now remember that on this table we don't have strongly agree, somewhat agree, and the other options. We just have favorable, neutral, and unfavorable, which makes our formula right here a lot shorter and easier to understand. So this is it, and we'll divide it by just count of, and I'll just paste it again, the column name. All right, so we have this question, and we had to put it here 3 times, right? Not the question, like the data column right here. And then we'll just go to number, percentage. I'll have 1 decimal place, hit OK. And I'll stop recording right here. So to see what we recorded, we have to go to VBA. If you don't have the developer tab, if you do, then you can just go there. If you don't have the developer tab, you don't have to activate it because we're just recording a macro and viewing the code. So developer tab is better if you need to insert form controls in your, like you can have a button here to say, I don't know, whatever you want. So if you're not going to do some kind of more advanced stuff with VBA, you can just go to VBA and you have the macros section here. You just click this and go to View Macros. Then right here, you have the macro that we created, create DAX measure. So just click this and hit Edit. And now we can see that our macro is here. So we're going to test it first. And the way we're going to do this is just go back here and delete the measure that we created. And then just come here and click the Run button here, or hit F5. So when we click this, it thought for a while. And then when we come here, we can see that we now have this measure. Okay, so delete this again. And let me show you, yeah, so this would just give you the opportunity to go and create one measure, but it would always be the same measure because, yeah, that's what we have here. It's hard-coded, everything that you had here. What you could do at this point, if you want to do it the easier but more laborious way, so it's not complicated, but it's longer to do it. You would have to go and copy all this code, paste it into Word. Well, you could do it here as well. Just hit Control H and get the question name. I think you got this right. So you just get the question name here and you replace it with the next question. So that's one way of doing it. And then you can just hit F5 and it would save you some time from right clicking, going to create new measure and all the things there. You would also have to replace this with the question number, like just going Q1, Q2, Q3, and so forth. So now what we're going to do is actually have Excel retrieve all the question names for us. And this involves a little bit of coding. So sub, and I'll just create and call it test. And on Excel, you can see that the great thing that when it records macros for you is that you can actually kind of see how things work with coding in Excel. So let's take a look at, yeah, active workbook dot model tables. And this is just to break the line. Okay, so I am interested in seeing a little more about how this works. And a function that's very helpful to help us understand how things work is message box. So we can do message box and then kind of go and use our dots here and try each of the methods or the properties of a certain part of the table. So yeah, for this one, I'm going to do a tables count. And I expect this to return me a 2. So I just go and run this, and it gave me a message saying 2. And it said 2 because we have the employee survey, text analysis table, and the favorability table. All right, so it's working so far. What we really want is the questions on number 2. They're the same questions, but let's get table 2. So model tables and 2. This is saying that we want from the second table. If we want to check if it's the right table, we can just go and do dot name and run it again, and we see favorability table. All right, so I'm actually going to do dot model table columns and then dot count. Let's see, it's probably going to be, I think, 17. Right, so 17 columns. First one, number 17 right here. And so let's get our second and do dot name. And let's see the name of the second column. Let's see if, oh, looks great. My manager clearly communicates his or her expectations. So I'm just going to create a comment down here, and single quotes is how you create a comment in VBA. And I'm going to call and to just say question 1, column 2. And then let me test 17. Okay, so we're not going to use this one. 16, we're not going to use this one. So I think 15 is going to be the last one. Yeah, because these are the favorability questions. So obviously question 14 is column 15. All right. I'm not going to use message box anymore because I already collected the data that I wanted about the columns. And I'm just going to create a variable, and I can call it column name. You can call it whatever you'd like. You can call it A or B or house, car, whatever you want. And then what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to copy what I had here. Just paste it here. And now, so every time we have my manager clearly communicates his or her expectations, we can insert our variable column name. But for this, see that this is in double quotes. What we need to do here is this started with quotes. We're going to end this with quotes and kind of cut it and weld it in place. So we just finish with single quotes, and now we have this emp to concatenate with the variable name. And then this is where it will resume with the hard-coded text that it had, and we have to concatenate with this as well. So if this was the variable name, we would be ready, but now just remove this and column name. So just take a quick look and see that this is how you cut the text, insert, concatenate a variable in its place, and concatenate with the rest of the hard-coded text. So I'm going to copy this, and then here I'll just highlight my manager clearly communicates his or her expectations, and we'll just replace it with this. Then here again, yeah, so sometimes it will be kind of hard to select everything. So just hold Control, Shift, and the arrow right to select everything. And then here, I'll just hit Control V again, and now I have my my formula, and it's now not using the column name that's hard-coded, and instead it's going to get each of the column names and replace it for me. Like it will create all these 14 columns. All right, so now if we had, let me just edit this. So instead of favorability question 1, I'm gonna do favorability Q. I'm gonna concatenate it with column number, which is another variable I'm going to create. And then actually, instead of column number, I'm going to call it question number. Okay. And then if we did this, question number equals 1. And then here, instead of doing 15, we're going to do question number plus 1. Why is it plus 1? Because when we start with question 1, we actually want it to be column 2, right? Question 1, column 2. So we had it plus 1. So depending on your table, if you have a lot of like things before your questions actually start, you're going to have to go and have a different number here, sometimes 1, sometimes 3. And yeah, you probably understood this by now. So right now what it's going to do is it's going to get number 1. It will get the column name. It will go and create a measure for me called favorability Q1, and it will just have the favorability for this question here because it got the column name here. Let's see, I currently don't have one. Let me just go and run this code, see if it's working. And here you go, favorability Q1. I'll delete this measure. And now I'm going to use another VBA thing. It's actually a programming structure called for, which is a loop that's going to create for question number, number equals 1, 2, and we'll do 14. I have to remove this. So it's going to repeat the same thing 14 times. After everything that we want to repeat, we want a next so that it can go back. And all it's going to do is it will attribute the number 1 to the variable question number. Then it's going to replace it here. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And it will go to column 2 and get its name. And the column name is a question name, actually. So what it's going to do is just come down here and say favorability Q1, favorability Q, and then get the number 1, concatenate it. So favorability Q1. And then with the name it got here, it will go and actually create the measure for us. Then it will go back here. We'll do the same for question 2, 3, and until 14. So I'm just gonna run this macro. You can see it's thinking for a while. And when we go back to Excel, you can see here all the 14 favorability measures. And if this is not still good enough, you can just come here and call it unfavorability Q1 to 14. And then we can just come here and change this. It was favorable. Let's see those who are unfavorables. If we were doing with the full names of the options, we would be calling this, we would actually be using strongly disagree and somewhat disagree. So right now I'm going to run the macro again. And if 14 measures created automatically weren't good enough, now we have 28, all favorabilities and unfavorabilities for each of them. We can also neutrality or just neutrals. Now let's see. Hit play again. Coming back here. And now we have all these measures and the columns that have favorability on them. So now if I want to see how, let's say, if we have like my manager, I want to see how they correlate. So my manager cares about my professional development. We have favorable, unfavorable, neutral, not applicable. Probably some people who didn't even answer it. And then when we go and choose favorability for a question, it would be easier if we just had the question numbers right here. We could go back to Power Query and rename the columns to have them, but I'm just not going to do this now. So I actually want to see if those people who think their managers don't care about their professional developments are the ones that don't have regular one-on-ones with their manager. So this is question 13, I guess. Yeah, this one's 14, so this one is 13. So let's see, favorability for question 13. All right, so we can see some differences here. So those who are favorable to the question on my manager cares about my professional development, these people actually are favorable on my manager meets with me in regular one-on-one meetings 86% of time. Those who said their managers they don't really care about my professional development, but they don't want to harm me as well. The favorability for this one was 45.5%, so we can see a huge difference. And those who say that their managers really don't care about their professional development, actually 25% of them, only 25% of them were favorable to the question that the managers meet with them regularly on one-on-one meetings. We can also go and get the neutrality and unfavorability. I can kind of go and see how this is like, and this is, yeah, it's exactly how it should have been. Like, those who are unfavorables to this question are also being unfavorable to the question about their managers doing one-on-ones with them. So it's working all right, and all the measures that Excel created for us with VBA, instead of us having to go and like just create all these measures. The same for columns right here. We didn't have to go and create the favorability. So now the thing is, if I wanted to break it down by actual responses rather than have favorability, I can just remove this and then go back to this one table. They're connected, remember this. So if I come here to my manager cares about my professional well-being, well, professional development, and if I drop this here, you can see that it gives you more specifics, which can be good or bad depending on what you're doing. So that's why we wanted to keep the two tables, one that has the actual answers and one that has it grouped into favorability. And now what we can do here is we're going to save this. Now there's one important detail where, let me just save this in the downloads folder, and I'm going to call this favorability, actually survey analysis. And so the file type, it can't be Excel macro enabled workbook, so we're going to lose our macros. And the reason for this is Power BI doesn't recognize it if it's not an Excel workbook. So we have to create it as this kind of file type. You save it, it will say it's going to remove your VB project or the code that we had for VBA. You can also go there and copy it before saving. I'll just hit yes because I can just go and redo it later. You can just get this and cut it, take it to Notepad and save it somewhere. Just remember that if you're to use this in another survey, you have to do some adaptations on question or column number or whatever. And then now we save this. I'll just close it. Last warning it gave us to say that it's not saving our VBA code. So now I'll go to File, Import, Power View or Power Query, and now Survey Analysis. And again, it gives us that message saying that it can import it for us, but it's not going to bring everything that Excel has. We'll accept it. And then you can see that it imported the tool queries to tables, and now 42 KPIs and measures. Which looks all right to me. I think all of them are here. And then close. Now we have everything here. So if you want to go and create your visuals to, let's use favorability table. Let's see, my manager meets with me in regular one-on-ones. This is going to be our table. Oh, sorry, our column chart. So my manager meets with me in regular one-on-ones in Axis. And then let's just get favorability on some other questions. So we can see favorable, neutral, not applicable, some blanks. We can see the same for other questions. And if we just want to compare favorables and unfavorables, we can also go ahead and, yeah, you know that you can come here and change the font sizes and all stuff, but let me just go ahead and you can also filter this by favorability on this question. You can also go and create a slicer for this. I'll just filter this, say that I just want favorables and unfavorables. So here you see that every question that we selected so far is influenced by the results on whether or not they have one-on-ones. This one doesn't really work because it's the same question. We did question 13 here, so we can't repeat this and get its measure because it will yield an infinitely large number because it's dividing by 0. We have no unfavorables for favorability on that same question. And now we see that this is a horrible visual. It just doesn't look good, has too many colors, but you can format it and make your case that if your managers do one-on-ones, their people will have a better perception of the company as a whole for all the other questions. And if we wanted to kind of know how many people were here, we can also get participant ID. Is it here, participant? Oh, actually, let me select a visual and get participant, include in tooltips, and we can rename it for this visual and call it count. And we can actually come here and choose count. And now if we hover over things, we're going to see that it's 211 people here. This is, yeah, so 211 that were favorable to my manager meets with me in regular one-on-one meetings, while for this one, it was 32 people. And now we can see how this influences other questions as well. So that's it. This is how you automatically create all the measures using VBA and all the columns that you don't really have to use DAX columns. What you can do instead is go and replace values in Power Query. And I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it helps. Let me know if you have any questions.